there, and thanks for listening to the Adulting is Easy podcast, where we make adulting easier by making money easier. This is your host, Lauren. I'm joined today by Athena Valentine Lent, a finance columnist for Slate and author of Budgeting for Dummies, published by Wiley in May 2023. Her writing has appeared in BuzzFeed, Prudential, The College Investor, Go Banking Rates, Money Other 30, and other places. Her personal finance blog, Money Smart Latina, won the Plutus Award for Best Personal Finance Content for Underserved Communities in 2020 and was named Blog of the Year in 2022. When she's not working, you can find her reading a Stephen King novel with her main man, a polydactyl cat named Harrison George. Thanks for joining me, Athena.
Thank you for having me.
So let's talk about FinTor. Many of you want to invest in real estate, but it's not easy for three reasons. First, it requires a lot of upfront cash. Second, it's complicated. And third, it lacks liquidity. This is where FinTor comes in. FinTor is a next-gen real estate investing app that solves these problems. With FinTor, you can start investing in real estate with less than $50 in a matter of minutes. You even have the ability to sell your shares in the future to other FinTor users. It's like the stock market, but for real estate. As today's show's sponsor, FinTor is offering Adulting is Easy listeners a free share. Support this podcast by downloading the free FinTor app and use the referral code at Adulting is Easy to get that free share. There is a link in the show notes. Our goal for today, as always, is to make adulting easier for listeners by discussing a personal finance topic, since managing money is a big part of adulting. So today, Athena, we're going to talk about budgets. But first, I want to know, how did you get into writing about personal finance?
Yay, budget. Probably no one probably ever says that, but I'm like, yay, budget. I got into writing about personal finance about I'm pretty old now. Let's say 15 years ago. Um, I don't want to say I was bad with money, but I just really lacked knowledge about money management. And I had no one really to teach me growing up about it. And so it was like trying to figure out how to keep myself accountable. And then I stumbled along like personal finance blogs. And then I was like, oh, I could do this. And the only personal finance blog that's still around is Ravanchi. So a geisha life. And so I just started following her. Then I just started writing and I was like just trying to keep myself accountable. I was working part-time, going to school part-time, going to school full-time.
Wow.
And so I did that for a while. And then I took a break in about 2013 because I went back to school. And I was going to school again full-time, working full-time. And so I did have Money Smart Latina. I started that after realizing that a lot of my students in a Title I school thought everyone got food stamps by groceries. And so that was a really interesting question, like a really interesting like conversation. And that's why I started writing again, and I really jumped into Money Smart Latina because all these kids looked like me, and I was like, okay, I really want to make sure like Latinas are getting the information they need to like manage their money and build wealth and just like be happy in life. So that's how I started, writing in personal finance. And I started doing it more for other people. And about 2019, I first started writing for Clever Girl Finance. And then I just kind of worked my way up from there. And then in 2021, I got a Slate column. And so it's kind of just really taken off from there, like building my roster and that.
That is so cool. And I think that's a somewhat common story where if you're into personal finance, you don't have to get as into it as we are, where we start creating content about it. But when you have your first questions about personal finance, naturally you go to the internet. And there's a good bunch of us now that are out there creating content. But back even 10 years ago, well, when I had just bought my first house, there wasn't a lot out there. And so I sort of stumbled along, excuse me, as well. So why are you so passionate about this topic then, especially as it relates to the Latino community?
I'm passionate about this topic as it relates to the Latino community because there is a severe wage gap between women and men in general. And it's even more so for Latinas. Latinas earn about 54 cents statistically to every dollar that a white male makes.
Awful.
And I really thought, okay, like Latinas in general need like that knowledge about budget and like how to earn more. so they can close the wealth gap on their own and they can actually like be more strategic with their money in case they're not getting as much.
So not only are you writing about personal finance, of course, we all have to manage our own personal finances. And as someone who is writing as their job, what has that looked like for you? Have you had to apply some of your own research and understanding to your own budgeting process?
Oh yeah. I write about a bunch of different things. Like I write about general finance, I write about taxes now. I've written about, investing, starting a small business, budgeting as a freelancer. And so I've been able to take like those topics and incorporate it into my own personal finance, which is great. And I've been able to like be strategic more with my own money and my partner's money. And I really think like that's just been really helpful.
There's so much flexibility that comes from basically working for yourself. We're talking about working as a writer, but when working as yourself or working as a freelancer, or even if you just kind of leave your job and go full bore on your side hustle, you end up having all of this flexibility and all this freedom. There's a lot of pros to it, but one of the cons, I think, is you have to manage money in a different way than you used to. So how did you budget for that? How do you take control of that? Do you have just like way more an emergency fund than you used to? Do you hold more cash than you used to? Are you investing like crazy, maybe because you want to make sure that you have kind of backup income going on? How does that look?
I have really worked to diversify my income streams. Along with writing, I also have a contract with a finance app that lets them syndicate my content or, regulate it's like weekly pay. So that's great. I also am the FinCon community liaison. And so FinCon is one of the biggest personal finance conferences in the world. Actually, that's where we met. And I am the community liaison. And so I'm in charge of all things people facing. And so that's something else I do. And then you're right, I have started investing and I have started investing more. And I just kind of, I'm not like cashing in my dividends yet because I think it is a little still too early, but it's just really great knowing that like I have that money set aside. And then I also opened an investment account to help me pay for my wedding next year. So, and then I still do like, I'll never say no to money within reason. And so, oops, kind of have a lot of fun with that. Anyways, um, I'll still do things like dog sit if I for my friends, or I'll still like, babysit, or if they're just like, hey, will you, do this like, can you like help me with my resume? I'll pay you like 30, $40. I'm like, sure. So, that's kind of what I do as well. Like, I don't, I am a firm believer that there's opportunity everywhere. You just kind of have to look for it. And so, because I believe that and I have that opportunity mindset, I think that it's a lot easier for me to just pick up more income streams.
I'm so glad you said that. I talk about abundance mindset a lot. We used to talk about it on Wealth Wednesdays all the time, our Twitter spaces. And that was a big thing for me too. Once you stop looking at the world through this scarcity mindset, where it's like, if I get more, then they have less, or because they have so much, that's why I don't. Once you stop with that mindset and you start thinking, I can make money all these different ways. I mean, one thing that I do is I have on Gumroad, I have some analyzing guides on how to analyze real estate deals. And every day I sell maybe like one of those. It's not a ton of money, but it's like a couple $100 a month. And I put, I think, 10 hours into creating them. And that's pretty cool to be able to get that, kind of recurring. So that is so true. And with the internet and just with networking and all of these types of things, social media, obviously, we can meet all of these different people, diversify our income streams, and not rely on one person to pay us. Because that's the thing. Somebody told me this one time. And it's where if you have your company and your company's paying you, you're getting paid by one company. If you work for yourself, you can have multiple income streams. You're getting income from all these different places. If something happens to one of those, you're still good.
And I think that is really important to remember. I learned that lesson the hard way. When I was writing my book last year, I cut way back on like clients. Like I was only writing if I felt like it was a really good opportunity. I couldn't pass up. So stuff like working with BuzzFeed and Potential, like I totally took those opportunities. And then So I was like, okay, I have a couple like gigs flowing. And then in January, like my hours got cut back for one of my gigs. And I was like, oh my gosh, like this is the stuff that freelancers don't talk about. And I had like relied on that income source. So I literally had to like sit and like start randomly pitching a bunch of people. But that's something that I have learned is that I need to have multiple clients just for that part of my income alone. But I'm like, okay, I have to make sure I have multiple clients. I'm diversifying not only my income streams, but also my portfolio and that kind of thing. So that's also really important.
Yeah. And the book you're talking about is the one we mentioned in the bio, which is Budgeting for Dummies. So you wrote a For Dummies book, which is absolutely incredible. And it's about budgeting. Did you have any thoughts as you were writing that? Any aha moments? Are there any budgets that you sort of like more than the others? If you could just kind of talk generally about, kind of what's in there for the listeners.
Yeah, of course. So budgeting for dummies is part of the For Dummies series. So it's one of those yellow and black books that you see around like everywhere. And so hopefully you now see mine everywhere as well. And so it's just kind of like it's an overview about budget, right? So the first part is the overview. So I talk about why you should have a budget. I talk about your expenses and your income. And then I go over the four main types of budgeting methods that most people use and that financial experts, including myself, recommend. And then the other parts of the book are kind of just cut up by like how to budget in everyday life situations. How do you budget for future expenses? How do you budget for retirement? How do you budget for, sending your kid off to college? And so it's just really broken up. And what I love about For Dummies is that you can like go in the glossary and you could be like, okay, I need to learn like what's a 529. And then it will tell you like page 316 or chapter, 15. And then you literally can just go to that chapter, read the section, and that's all you have to do. Like you can pick it up anywhere and like learn about a topic. You don't have to go all throughout the book. However, I do suggest going all throughout the book. And if you're not going to go through all the book, I do suggest learning about the different types of budgeting methods.
What are those different methods?
Okay, so the first budgeting method is zero-based budgeting. And this seems to be a big one that's used in the personal finance community, right? So zero-based budgeting is when you have a spending plan for your money and you assign every dollar you bring in a job, right? And you have different spending categories that you assign those dollars to. And once that category has been spent, you're not supposed to spend anymore. And so by breaking up your like spending, like tracking your spending that way and breaking up your income that way, it really gives you a general overview of where exactly your money is going. And then it allows you to also cut back. The second budgeting method is the 50-30-20 budget. And this was coined by Elizabeth Warren and her daughter. They have an entire book about it. But this method is 50% of your income goes towards your needs. So, your living expenses like transportation and groceries. 30% of your budget goes towards your wants. So, if you are taking a trip or going out with your friends or checking out a concert, that would go in this section of your budget. And then the 20% remaining is to be used towards your saving goals. So, if you have debt repayment, it's supposed to go under your needs because that's something that you have to pay legally. But if you want to if you want to throw extra money at your debt or, just kind of pay it off early, that money would come from the 20%.
That
The
goes in
third
the
budget,
needs. I
yes,
never knew that. I don't know. I don't know. I didn't know that. And the 50-30-20, I think is my favorite one. Sorry to interject. I
no,
think
you're
it's my
good.
favorite one. And you can tweak those percentages too. Just think of it as, needs, wants, and then saving and investing. So if you want to do the financial independence, retire early thing, get your needs down, get your wants down, get that in saving and investing section up to more than 20. And that's how you kind of make that happen. But I think it's really easy. And that makes it a really easy way to think about your spending. A lot of times you think, okay, I have housing, I have transportation, I have entertainment. If I go out to eat, is that entertainment or is that food? Then I have groceries, and it can get really complicated and really granular really quickly. So I love how you just, is it a want? Is it a need? Is it for the future?
So I really like the 50-30-20 budget because it encourages you to live on less. So that way you're, not as dependent on your job, or you can cover yourself in emergency. So usually we are dependent on a job anyways. But say you're making like 75,000 of it and your needs is like 60, you're going to need to find a new job that covers your needs, that you can't go any lower than 60%. It might be harder for you to find a job that way. However, if you know that your needs are, let's say $30,000, you know that you can take your job that was 70 and you have more flexibility to find another job. You don't necessarily need to hit that income requirement. But that doesn't mean that you can't, take a job and then keep looking. Like, that's perfectly fine. But, if you're able to take a job with lower pay, that at least stops you from dipping into your savings.
That's an excellent point. So, what is the third budgeting method?
The third budgeting method, which I think is actually my favorite budgeting method, is the cash envelope method. So, the cash envelope method is where you take your fixed expenses and you pay your fixed expenses out of your checking account. However, for all of your variable expenses, you withdraw cash from the bank and you put money into different envelopes. So if I want, so let's say I have $600 and I have groceries, I have entertainment, and I have, I need to come up with money for gas. So I might put, 300 for food, like groceries. I might put 200 for entertainment, and I might put $100 in the gas envelope. So once I spend the money from that envelope, it's gone until my budget cycle restarts itself. And so I like that because I'm a recovering shopaholic, which I go over in my book. Yes, I am a recovering shopaholic. And so I go over that in full detail in my book. And I think for me, making money tangible is actually better. While I was doing research for this book, I came across what's known as the pain of pain principle. And so there have been studies of psychologists, like psychologists have done, and other people in their field that have actually recorded that people are less likely to touch their cash than they are to swipe their credit card. And it's because when you literally touch your cash and part with it, it hurts. And so while I don't, encourage you to be like a self-masochist, I do encourage you to try to make your money as tangible as possible. So that way you think more about spending.
That's a good point. I also kind of like that idea. Maybe you start there, get more comfortable with, basically finance, living below your means, get in almost the habit of that. And then maybe you can transition away from it, or you could always do it. But that's interesting. The one thing I always worry about with that is like, I'm going to lose my envelope or something.
And you know what? I get that completely. But you don't have to carry all your cash with you all at the same time. So what I do is I'll withdraw, say I need $300 a week. That's my variable spending money. So I'll go ahead and I'll assign it into my categories and my envelopes. But sometimes if I'm leaving the house, say I'm going to Target, I do not need to bring $300 with me into Target. Okay. So I'll put,
I can
$50.
spend $300 at Target though, let me tell you.
So can I.
But
And
that's
that's why
that's why you don't bring it in.
uh-huh. Yep. And yeah, and I'm not even gonna go into it. Like I have a Target like red card where I get 5% off and all these coupons. But anyways, I'll take, $50 and put it into whatever envelope I'm gonna be spending money on, and I'll just take that envelope and I won't take the rest of my cash. If something happens and I need to spend money, I still have my debit card or my credit card, but I don't need to be carrying around hundreds of dollars of cash on me at all times.
Good point. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, of course. And then the final budgeting method I want to talk about is called the pay yourself first budget. And so a lot of people do this and they're not realizing that it's actually a budgeting method. And, the past few months, I've had a lot of people argue with me about it. And I'm like, yeah, well, it's still considered a budgeting method. So there. But what you do is you first put your money, usually you can want to start with about 10% of your income before you spend any other dollar of your income. you want to make sure 10% is automatically deducted and going towards your financial goals. So whether that is, you want to put more money into retirement, or you want to throw more money onto your debt, or you want to just stash money for an emergency fund, you do that first with a 10%. Then all of your wants and needs can come out of the remaining 90%. And so if you don't feel like tracking everything to a T category wise, but you still want to make sure you hit your goals, this is a budget that could work out really well for you. There is a con, in my opinion, is that you do not have as much structured spending. And so you can start spending like more frivolously than you would have if you just would have took your income and assessed like your spending into categories. But the pro about this budget is you don't have to start at 10%. Like you could say the first month, I'm going to start at 10%. And that way you're like, okay, cool. Well, I'm going to go up a percent. And so, by the end of the year, you could have upped your like money towards your goals by 22% over 10% of your income. And, that's definitely a pro of this budget is, slowly but surely you can work your way up towards where you're saving a good chunk of it.
That's a good, I love that. That's a good, I've never even, I've heard of that budget, but I do kind of forget, like you said, that it is even a budget.
Well, and people also call it the anti-budgeting method. And I'm like, okay, but it's still a method.
Yeah, it definitely counts for me.
You're still teaching people to budget.
Yeah, absolutely. And save, which is really what matters. The hardest part of budgeting, and it's often compared to dieting, and is how do you stick to it? What advice do you have for people on that?
Oh, this is hard. I mean, it's not hard, but it can. So, what I do to stick to my goals is you cannot see it, dear listeners at home, but if you would like to see it, please email me. But this is my vision board. And so I make all of my goals, like my financial goals, visible. And so, for instance, I may or may not have did plagiarism and put over another Dummies book cover. But
Okay.
also,
Well, I'm sure they sign off on that.
they let me keep it in my book. So
Oh yeah. And by
I
the
just,
way, guys, this is on YouTube, so if you're on YouTube, you can look at this. But if you're listening, it's a very nice vision board. We've got beautiful pictures everywhere. It's a cork board.
yeah,
There's pins. And by the way, if you can't see this, you're missing that Athena has ears on her headphones. Just side note while we're talking about the visual medium.
I gotta stay hip with the kids. I gotta
Yeah.
stay hip with the kids. But I like to make my goals visual. So I like to remind myself of why I'm doing it in the first place. Right now, my current goal, outside of paying for my wedding, because I feel like that's just an automatic expense at this point, is redecorating my patio. And so I have a lot of pictures of like what I want my patio to look like. And this keeps me in check from like doing mindless Amazon purchases or, just spending money because I can. I went to Mexico a couple weeks ago. I gave myself like a $300 budget because Mexico is pretty cheap. And I ended up being able to use like $50 of that. Actually, it was more. I ended up being able to use like almost $100 of that towards my patio instead of spending on my trip. So I just, that's one way that I think I motivate myself. Another way that you can motivate yourself is that, or another way you can stick to your budget, I must say, is that you can limit how much time you spend in stores, right? We all go grocery shopping or we all go to Target or go to another store. And not only does that take like our resource of our money, it also takes our resource of our time. And it also takes our resource of like mental energy. And so a way to combat this is to start getting your groceries or other items actually delivered to your house. So I have a Instacart membership. It was $30 for the year, but it's free delivery like for the entire year and it's lower prices and lower fees. So I find that it's really like beneficial for our household. But my fiance and I will just open a cart on Instacart and we'll pick what we want or what we need. And then we'll just go ahead and we'll hit click and then they bring us only stuff that we asked for. I find this saves us a lot of money because, you go to the grocery store and you can end up with like an extra 20 or 30 bucks added to your bill because you were just like, oh, this looks cool. Oh, I want to try this in. Oh, I should do this. This would be really cool. Um, and another thing that I've started to do to stick to my budget, like I said, along with having stuff delivered, is I make sure that I am, utilizing whatever I can, like cashback apps, that kind of thing. That's been a way I've stuck to my budget. And then also, I find that having a accountability partner is also a great way to stick to your budget. And so you don't have to go over the exact numbers with people, but I have a friend, Mariah Chase, and I always like run my budget by her, and I bounce off for like, do I really need this? Do I really need this? If you don't have someone that you feel comfortable with bouncing, your income and checking account balance with, you can always go to a money forum. They allow you to be anonymous, which is great. And then you yourself can also be your own cheerleader, like make a spreadsheet, go on Canva and do graphs so you can see how far your progress has come. Again, it's much easier to stay motivated when it's actually visible or something tangible.
Those were awesome tips. And you had the vision board right there and everything. I love it. Is there anything else you want to add, Athena, before we wrap up?
I just think that everyone should at least try to have a budget in place. I think that budgeting is actually part of the foundation that you build other personal finance accomplishments off of. So if you don't know where your money is going, it's going to be harder for you to like pay for a house or, pay for tuition. It's going to be harder to do all these other things that require money if you don't know where your money is going. And so people might say, budgeting's lame or whatever. It's just I can't cut it anyways. You actually can take charge of your money. And when you take charge of your money, so many things like open up to you and you're just really empowered because you finally realize that stuff is attainable for you. You just have to make sure you have that core foundation in place.
Very well said. Well, how can people get in touch with you?
Well, I'm open to fans of all ages, so come say hi. I'm usually on Twitter a lot. My Twitter handle is at According Athena. I have my Instagram, which is Money Smart Latina. And if you're feeling really brave, go ahead and write a question into my Slate Pay Dirt column. You just go to slate.com/paydirt and you will find a way for you to submit a question. And feel free to mention that you heard me on this podcast. But you can go ahead and submit a question and I can answer it and it can be juicy. So, I mean, if you're ready for it, I can lay down some hard facts.
That's great. Okay, I'll put all of that in the show notes, and you can follow me, guys, on Twitter at Adulting is Easy. Like this is on YouTube, like I said, also at Adulting is Easy, on Instagram at Adulting is Easy Real, and you can email me at realadultingiseasy@gmail.com. If you really like this episode, you'll also like episode 144 with Janice from Yo Quiero Dinero called "You Should Have Multiple Streams of Income," and episode 56 with J Rod called "Simple Financial Advice." Thanks for listening, everybody. Hopefully, Athena and I have made adulting a little easier for you.